Okay, so I want to show you here, and we're going to start doing our shift dress. This is the second video for this Saturday, because as I said in the first video, if you watched it, I missed last Saturday because I was really sick. So this is our second video. The first video was an infinity scarf. So go ahead and watch that video. But this, I'm going to make a shift dress for my daughter. I have this burgundy fabric here. This is a cotton lycra, and I got this fabric from Fabric World, USA. It's a company based in New York, and they have all kinds of fabric there. Cotton fabric, they have nylon, they have spandex, stretch spandex, rayon, they have some print. So I actually went through there because I was looking for some spandex, and they had like the cheapest price that I found per yard. So but I want to show you here. You see how I got that pinned, and I have the sides pinned here. You may be asking, why did I do that? And I haven't even cut this fabric yet. Well, what I found over time is when you're cutting fabrics like this that tend to not stay together, when you're cutting, you get an uneven cut. So what I found that is, if I pin it along the top and on the sides, then I'll get a better cut. And I'm going to iron this just a little bit before I begin cutting. I made a pattern out of this shirt because this is actually a 4T, and she's like, for her tops, she's more in a 5T5. So what I've done was I measured it out like 1/4 of an inch, and I made a pattern out of this shirt, and you could do the same thing. So for this particular video, I'm just going to use this shirt. I'm not going to use the pattern because I don't want to confuse you. Like I said, I pinned the top and I pinned the sides, and I ironed it out a little bit, and it is folded. I folded it the long way, and this, you can do it however you want to. This is just the way I'm doing it. So I'm going to set this down on the edge of the fold, and I'm not going to cut on the curve here because the bottom part of my shirt is actually curved, and I'm not going to cut along that curve. I actually want to cut straight. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to move this up to where my pins are, and then we're going to cut for the back later on. Because I'm making a dress, I'm going to make this just a little wider than I normally would. And okay, so I have the fabric here for the shift dress. I have it pinned along the top and pinned along the sides, and I do that because I have a hard time cutting this cotton lycra, because every time I've cut before and I haven't pinned the top and the sides, I tend to get an uneven cut. Now we're making a shift dress, and what I'm going to show you is how I am cutting along the fold, as you can see. But this bottom part, I'm going to actually fold this in half so I can cut the front and the back at the same time. But I want to show you, we have our handy dandy shirt that we always use. You have seen this shirt in most of the video tutorials I have done. I'm doing this instead of using the pattern that I made out of this, just to show you how I go about doing it. Now, if I didn't make a pattern from this, I would definitely use this, but because I'm doing this today, I am going to show you how to do it with the shirt instead of the pattern that I made, because I don't want to confuse you. Now, this shirt is a size 4T. My daughter is actually 5T to 5, and she's growing. So with dresses, she actually can still fit 3T to 4T, and some 5s are a little bit big on her. But I noticed that over the summer she started getting really tall, so I'd rather make it a size up than the correct size, because then I'll be making it again. I marked out here 2 inches, and I did that because I'm making a dress and not a shirt. So what I'm going to do is put this here, and I'm going to start by just pinning this first. And I marked down, actually I think I marked wrong, but I want this to be between 22 and 23 inches long. So I'm actually going to mark it at 22 and a half, And that's how long I want this shift dress. And I'm only doing it to here, and I'm not giving myself much seam allowance for this because I'm going to add a bottom border. I'm adding a satin bottom border to this. As you will see, I'll show you how to cut that out. And then I'm going to make a satin collar for this, and with the sleeves, I'm going to have the border of the sleeves with a satin border as well. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and pin this. Now I'm going to pin this down because I want to fold this fabric in half so that I can cut my front and my back piece at the same time. What I'm going to do is fold it here where I marked for the length of the dress. And I'm going to fold this in half, and I am working on the wrong side of the fabric right now. You really never want to cut on the right side. Whenever you're working or cutting and sewing, you want to work on the wrong side of the fabric. So I'm cutting on the fold on both sides. So now that I have it folded where I want the length to be, I'm just going to go ahead and pin the front and the back together. So I'm actually not even taking the pin all the way out. I'm just kind of slipping the back part of the fabric in there. If I am confusing you at any point, please leave your questions or comments in the comment box, and I will answer as soon as I can. I know sometimes I can go a little fast and it may get a little confusing, and I know sometimes I could drag on talking, but I love to give people detail because you may not know how to do this. You may not know what you're doing, and I want to give you as much information as I can. So for some of you, I may talk too much, but for most of you, I may not be talking enough. So just let me know. You know, I'll tweak the videos to help out all of my followers. So what I'm doing now is feeling to make sure there's no like rolls or any humps, as I like to call them, because I want it to be as even a cut as possible. Okay, so when we start cutting, what I'm going to do is cut the length first. So what we're going to do here is we're going to cut it. So this is how long the front and the back pieces are going to be. And if I can get my scissors in there, I can go ahead and cut this. Okay. I went ahead and pinned for this very reason. There. Now, I'm just going to go ahead and iron that out when I'm done. But right now, what we're going to do is cut. So this is the length of the dress, and I'm kind of eyeballing it here, but for you, I will go ahead and mark so that you're cutting the right spot. I have a tendency to eyeball things a lot, and most of the time it's accurate, most of the time I'm off a little bit, but that's okay because I know how to fix it. So let's go ahead and cut. Try to get as straight as possible with this cut. And I'm not cutting along the curve. I want this to be straight. This shirt is a little curved. However, I want this shift dress to be straight. So when you're done, you're going to have a front piece and you're going to have a back piece. So now we're cutting around the armhole. So let's take the pin out right here because we don't want to cut the pin. And what you're going to do and I will show you what I do. Now, when I'm done, what I tend to do, because we have our scraps, and our scraps can always be reused, I'm going to cut evenly across here so I can save my scrap pieces to use for something else. And it seems my daughter's having a meltdown right now. And good thing it's weekend because Daddy can take care of her while I'm filming. So see, and I just fold these right back up, and I go ahead and unpin this. So I'm just going to set this aside because that's just going to take too long. So now, if we look at this, I don't really have the neck hole cut, right? So what I'm going to do here is cut my front and my back separately. I'm going to take what I'm going to do, and one little tip: you don't, when you're using cotton lycra, any kind of cotton knit, just know that when you're doing a curve for the neckline, you see how mine is right here? You don't want to cut down there, because what's going to happen is it's going to be too wide. So you want to cut the neck hole smaller than the line of the shirt that you're using. If you don't understand what I'm saying, please, please, please leave it in the comments and I will explain more in detail to you. So I'm just going to cut the curve here for the neckline, and when it gets folded over, when it's time to go ahead and cut, fold this over for the seam, the neckline, I'm sorry, then we will have the proper hole for that neckline. So what I'm going to do for the back is just cut slightly higher, because you don't want your back to be as low as your front. So now we have both pieces cut, and like I said, we're making a shift dress. If you like vintage style like I do, I believe, I'm not exactly sure, don't quote me because I'm not that much knowledgeable of vintage clothing, so I don't know exactly when the shift dress came out, but I know I see it when I look for a lot of 1950s patterns. They have a lot of these shift dresses in 1960s and 70s. So what you're looking at now, this is your front piece. If you get confused, mark it. Marker F for front. I'm using the chalk here that is washable. So you just put an F for front and a B for back. So now what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut all my pieces out before I actually start sewing. So now that we have our front and our back here, and this is what it looks like right now. This is the back and this is the front. And you can see a little bit what I mean about the neckline, because once you fold this over to sew, it's going to get a little bit wider. So you don't want to cut it too wide in the beginning, because then it will be way off once you begin sewing. So I'm going to take these pieces here, and then I'm going to go ahead and get my black satin charmeuse. This is what I'm going to use for the bottom layer of the dress and for the pockets as well as the collar. Okay, so for my bottom layer that I'm going to add to the end of my dress, this is my black satin charmeuse that I'm going to use to add the pockets, the collar, the sleeve border, and the bottom border to my shift dress. And because I want this to be 2 inches, I'm going to cut it at 4 inches. I don't know how long it is yet. I'm actually using a scrap piece of fabric, so I didn't really measure it. But like I said before, I like to eyeball stuff, so it looks like it's going to be long enough to go around my dress. But what you want to do is measure how long your dress is around the circumference, and then just add 2 inches to your border piece, just to give yourself enough room. And I'm cutting this at 4 inches. I know you're saying, if you want 2 inches of border, why are you cutting 4? Well, I'm going to fold this in half. and then I'm going to add it to the bottom. So for tutorial purposes, I will go ahead and measure this, and we'll see how long it is. It's a pretty long piece, and I probably won't need the full length of this, so I'm just going to measure. This is folded, so I'm just going to measure what it folds at, and it's I'm going to cut that piece off. So it measures at 28, and that equates to 56. What am I talking about? So you're probably asking, why do you need it that long? I don't. I definitely don't need it at 56, but I would rather be safe than sorry. And what I have here is a Peter Pan collar that I cut out, and I have half my sleeve. Now as you can see, I have the fold line here where I'm saying to cut on the fold. So I just give myself that little note. If you need to know how to cut sleeves, I can do a tutorial for you. Just put in the comments how do I do the sleeve. But basically what I do is I take the shirt and I kind of measure around. So what we have here, it will be like this. And you just measure around halfway. You do a straight line, measure around, you come out a little divot, and that's what you see here. And then you measure straight down or curve in, or however you want the sleeve to go. I only want this to be a half sleeve, which is why it's only halfway. But again, what I do to get the sleeve is I'm straight down across here, and I measure the curve on my paper halfway. Then when you get to here, you want to come down as far as you want your sleeve to go, and then give it a bottom. So it will be like this, and then that curve will be like right there. So if you need me to show you how to do that, as I stated, go ahead and leave that in the comments. And for this Peter Pan collar, I didn't know how to do this myself. I have a vintage pattern that I actually got this from, so I just adjusted it a little bit. I added 2.5 inches because I wanted to come around a little further in the front. So that's where I got this from. But since I haven't measured out, if you would like for me to measure it out for you, again, leave that in the comments. So we're going to work with this piece first, since I already have this cut out. And again, this is black satin charmeuse. You can get it from fabric.com. Actually, I got mine from Thread Art because I ordered it wholesale. And I'm going to iron this out first, and you want to make sure it's on the right settings because you don't want it to burn, and mine is. And then once I get this ironed, I'm going to fold it in half. Now, you may be thinking, do you fold it on the wrong side? For this, you do not. You're going to fold this on the right side, and I'll show you why when we begin to sew. So you're just going to fold it up. So you have your 4-inch piece here. You're just going to fold it up like this. So then it'll start looking like a border. And you want to iron this. You definitely want to iron it. You don't want to just leave it. Do you need to pin it? At this point, you do not. We're just ironing it flat. Make sure you do it really well, because this is going to go on the bottom of our shift dress. I love to see things that people make from watching my videos. I'm so very proud of my best friend who has taken my cheer bow video and has made so many beautiful cheer bows. And I will leave a link to her YouTube page so that you can follow her and possibly order some of her cheer and dance bows. Do I make them? Yes, I do, but that is not my main focus. So that's why I don't post any of those things. And also, I just forgot that I opened my Etsy store again. So take a little mosey on by my Etsy store. I will leave that in the description. Okay, so we have our border piece ironed. Now I'm going to cut out the sleeves, the pockets, and the collar. And once I do that, we'll go ahead and start putting everything together. As I started making pockets, and I wanted to put the satin on the top, so I'm going to go ahead and sew across here. Then we're going to fold the sides and the bottom of the pocket. So we are done with the first pocket. Now I'm going to start on the second one, and now we're done with the other pocket. So now we're just going to take the sides and fold them in, and I'm going to iron mine down. And you can sew these now if you want, or you can wait. I'm going to wait to stitch it when it's time to connect it to the dress. So now that I have the collar piece flattened out, and I finished the pocket, as you can see, I folded over both sides and the bottom. So when I get ready to stitch this onto the dress, it's all ready. I have the sleeves cut out and I have the borders cut out for my sleeves. So this is what the sleeves look like cut out, and it's a little folded over, so you don't really get the gist of it just yet, but you will once we start putting everything together. And of course I still have our two pieces here. So I like to get everything prepared before I actually start working on the main piece. So that's what we're going to do right now. So you want to put the collar together, the inner part pinned, which is the part that's going to be attached to the collar of the dress. I'm going to go ahead and start to sew around the back edges of the collar. So I did my zigzag stitch, and now I'm going to go ahead and go over it again with a straight stitch. So now we have it, and then we're going to just take it and turn it right side out. And so far so good, it looks good. So once you get it turned right side out, you're going to go ahead and iron it so that it's flat when you get ready to attach it. Sorry. Color, as you can see, flattened out. I'm going to start putting the dress together, and we're going to start on the wrong sides, and I marked it so I know that this is my front piece. But I'm going to take my front and my back, and I'm just going to attach it at the top when it's time. However, right now what I'm going to do is take my front and take my back, and I'm going to sew it together at the shoulder. So I'm going to pin it right here, and then I'm going to sew it. And here I am being super obsessive again. However, sometimes being obsessive helps the project. And I just lost a needle. Okay. So I'm glad that I cut both pieces together because everything looks even. And that makes me happy. Okay. So we're going to pin this. And then we're going to pin the other side. And we're not going to connect the sides of the dress just yet because we want to put the shoulders on. We want to put the sleeves on before we sew down the side of the dress. It's really easy to make, really simple to do. So now that I have this pinned, I'm going to go ahead and sew the shoulders together. It's the difference between the front and the back when we cut. You see how the front is a little bit lower than the back. Okay, and all I did right now was sew together the shoulder part. So what we're going to do before we go ahead and sew the sides and the collar, we're going to put the sleeves on. So now that we have our sleeves, and like I told you, I put the satin charmeuse here on the bottom of my sleeve. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch along this top line because that's where I folded it over, and I did that with both of my sleeves. And then once I get this sewn, I'll show you how to connect it. So now we're going to connect the sleeve, and what I like to do is put the pointy edges together first before I connect the top part of the sleeve. So just look for that pointy edge on the dress and the pointy edge here on the sleeve. And we have right sides facing each other, so the wrong side should be facing you. I'm just going to pin it around, and now that I did that, now I'm going to go ahead and attach the rest of it. I do it this way just so it's even. It gets a little bit more even if you do it this way. And I'm going to use a finishing stitch along the shoulders instead of using a regular straight stitch or zigzag stitch, because I want these seams to be more secure than the rest of the dress. We're going to do the same thing with the other side. So I'm going to go ahead and finish mine, sew it together, and then we'll go to the next step. So this is what everything should look like now. Got your sleeves on, got good seams going, everything is starting to come together. So now what I'm going to do, instead of me starting again with the sides, I'm going to put the pockets on the front right now. Okay, so now we have our pockets on the front, and they're as even as I could get them, but they're there. Okay, so I know I said we're going to put the dress together, but I forgot we need to put the collar on. So how you attach the collar is you're going to turn your dress right side facing you. Because I have a double side, I guess it really doesn't matter which side goes on the right side and the wrong side. But what you're going to do is you're going to attach it a little bit differently than you normally do everything else. So we're going to stick this inside here, because what's going to happen is once we stitch this together, it gets stitched together, right? You're going to turn it out, and then it's going to lay flat. So I'm going to go ahead and stitch mine. You stitch yours, and then pin mine, then we'll stitch it, and then we'll fold it, or I'll show you how to fold it over. So now I want to just show you how we have our collar in here. Now I put it on the inside of the shirt, and I do have it right side turned facing me. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zigzag stitch all around the collar, and then once I'm done, I'm going to flip the collar out, iron it, and so it'll be flat. Now what I just noticed, because I'm using a satin fabric, when you cut your collar, you want to make sure that it's cut far enough so that your child's head can get through, because once you put this on, even though you're using a cotton lycra and it's stretchy, once you put on the satin and stitch it, it's going to be kind of firm. So you want to be sure that if this is a pullover item, that your child can get their head through here, or that you leave some kind of opening like a zipper in the back or buttons so that your child can get it on, because you would hate to have to make this and then the head can't fit through. So make sure that when you're cutting for the satin collar or whatever the collar is, if it's not stretch material, make sure that it's cut far enough so that your child's head can fit through, or that you leave some kind of alternative opening to do so. So now that we have our collar on, what you want to do is pull it out, and now you can see that your collar is attached. So now we're going to have to turn it back wrong side out so that we can sew the sides together. Attach the sleeves, pin them, and then go all the way down to the full of the dress. And you can just pin it together, but make sure you have it wrong side out. Then once you have the stitch done all the way down, then you can turn it back right side out, and we can attach the bottom border. And then at that point we'll be done. If there's anything extra that you want to add, you can do it at that point, or you can do it before you sew your sides together. Now that we have the dress sewn together, what you want to do, and you don't have to do this, just if you want to, you can flatten your seam here with the iron. And what we have is a pretty little dress. So there we go. And if you want the collar to be closer to each other, then you would just make it longer. You would take your pattern piece and just pull it back maybe 1 or 2 inches, 3 inches, to make it come all the way around a little bit more. So this part looks a little plain to me, so what I'm going to do is probably add something. But now that we have it done, we want to add our bottom border. And how we're going to do that is simply by, I cut about 1/4 of an inch off the bottom of the dress, just because I'm adding 2 inches of bottom border. I still have this right side out, and like I said, I folded mine. So what I'm going to do is attach it to the bottom of the dress, just like you would if you were adding another layer to the skirt, but make sure you have it right side facing you. So I'm going to take my bottom border and I'm going to pin it all the way around. I'll go ahead and stitch it and then show you what it looks like when I'm done. I just want to give you a little tip. Remember how I cut my bottom border really long? Well, now I cut it. I'm going to attach the 2 pieces here. I cut it once I got all the way around so that I could connect these 2 pieces, because I don't want to overlap it. I just really don't like the way it looks when it's overlapped. So before I stitch my border on, I'm going to stitch this closed, and then I'll go ahead and attach my border to the bottom part of my dress. Go ahead and do a straight stitch around and a zigzag stitch. I'll probably start with a zigzag stitch first and then do the straight stitch. As you can see, the dress is all done, and I actually made this too big. Now that I'm looking at it, I went 2 inches over, and I probably should have only gone 1 inch over from the shirt, but the good thing is I can shrink it and she'll grow into it. A scrap piece of fabric from when we were cutting the fabric earlier today for the sleeves. So what I'm going to do is fold this over. Now I'm doing this the long way and not the width. I'm doing this lengthwise, and I'm folding over both sides to the center and ironing. So it doesn't really have to look perfect for this part, because you're going to fold it in anyway. So this is what it looks like. So now what you're going to do is just fold this into the center, fold this into the center. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to sew mine. So I'm turning it on the wrong side so I can just sew a straight stitch down, and then I'm going to turn it right side out. love doing these little bows like this. They're so easy, so simple. You can make hair bows with them. You can add them to, you know, the creations that you make. You can make jewelry out of them. So many things you can do with these little bows. So that is the only stitch I'm going to need for this. I'm done with my sewing machine for today. So let's clip off the extra threads hanging. And if you want, you could clip off your corners so you don't have a problem with them when you're making the bow. Now don't clip off your seam you just sewed, because then you'll have to start all over. So I'm going to take it, I'm going to turn it right side out. So now what it looks like, it actually looks like a little armband. Huh. Cute, right? Anyway, we're going to take this. And if you've made bows with me before, you know how I do this. We're going to go ahead, try to center that seam as much as we can. And then we're going to take it, fold it in at the bottom, and fold it in at the top. So it looks like that. Hold it back. And now we have our bow. Now at this point, you can either stitch it, you can wrap it with a twisty tie, which is what I use normally. You can use thread to secure it. Okay, so I changed my mind on the thread. It just didn't work with this thick fabric, but I used just a little twisty ties that come in the garbage bags. And now I have my little satin piece here, and I'm going to take it and I'm just going to put it around the center of my bow. It's a little bit thick, so I'm probably going to cut it some because it's kind of covering up too much. So I'm going to go ahead and cut about that much off. We have the center piece done. As you can see, mine is a little loose, but when I sew it onto the dress, it'll be fine. So I'm going to hand stitch this part. Okay. So now I am done with the dress. As you can see, I added the bow. It's all done. I have the bottom part here with the pockets and the sleeves with the satin. So as always, thank you for watching Sew Saturdays, and you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, or follow me on my blog, which is frugaldiyymom.com. Thank you, and see you next Saturday.